Здравствуйте, товарищи. Welcome back to Russian Through Propaganda. Today's day 21, and our topic is the dative case. We're going to learn the dative case endings for singular nouns and adjectives. And let's start off by talking about what the dative case is used for in Russian. Well, let's first think about an English sentence. I gave a present to my mom. Okay, what do we have there? Well, I is the subject, give or gave or whatever is the verb. Okay, what's the direct object? What is directly absorbing the force of the verb? That would be present, right? I gave a present. Now we know that in Russian, the subject, the ya, would be in the nominative case. Present, the direct object, would be in the accusative. And now what about I gave a present to mom, right? How would we express that in Russian? Well, as you might have guessed, we would use the dative. Right, so again, as so often happens in English, where in English we use a prepositional phrase like to mom or for mom to show what that word mom is doing in the sentence. In Russian, we can simply use a case ending instead of the preposition we use in English. And in fact, in English, we sometimes also, or quite often really, do without a preposition. So we would say something like, I gave mom a gift. I gave mom a gift. Okay, you may never have thought about this, but how on earth do we know that mom is the indirect object in that sentence, right? And would therefore correspond to a dative form in Russian? Well, actually, in this case, that's the only thing that really makes sense, right? We wouldn't give mom to a gift, right? That wouldn't make any sense. But let's take another example where the context doesn't really unambiguously tell us what is the direct object, what is the indirect object. I fed my cat the fish. I fed my cat the fish. Okay, so again, you might think, well, surely any normal person would only feed a fish to their cat, but who knows? Maybe you have a giant fish, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility to feed a cat to a fish. Okay, but that aside, how do we know that if we hear the sentence, I fed my cat the fish, how do we know what's the indirect object? How do we know that cat is the indirect object? Because it comes first in the sentence, right? So in this case, English word order uh, is telling us what is the indirect object, what is the direct object. And that's one reason why, as we've mentioned several times, English word order is often less flexible than Russian, right? Since Russian has the case endings to show the relationship between words, the words themselves can come almost anywhere in a given sentence, right? Um, so anyway, I fed my cat the fish. I fed my cat the fish. If we switch the word order, right, I fed the fish my cat, right, then the meaning has been turned upside down, right? I fed the fish my cat would mean, or at least strongly imply that uh, I fed my cat to the fish. Okay, so that's kind of confusing, but we just wanted to point that out in English that the word order often matters. But we can kind of forget everything we've just said and just point out again that in Russian, we would we would show that a word is an indirect object by simply putting it into the dative case. Uh, Whereas in English, again, we could use a to or for prepositional phrase, right? I baked a cake for my mom. I gave a present to my mom. To mom, for mom. That's going to be dative case in Russian. Let's look at a quick poster. Miru mir, to the world peace, or for the world peace. Now we have the same word here, mir, which has several meanings in Russian. The two most important ones are world and peace. So this poster is kind of playing on the dual meanings of this word. And as you see, the first, you can see the forms are different. Miru, that happens to be the dative. There's our first look at a dative ending, whereas mir is simply in the nominative, right? So to the world or for the world, that's being communicated by that dative ending, u. Miru, mir. Okay, if we look at the dative case endings, we have for masculine and neuter. Now remember, masculines and neuters are generally going to behave very similarly in terms of the endings they take. They originally belong to a single declension in Slavic, so they're, with a few exceptions, they behave very similarly. Okay, so for masculine and neuters, the adjectival ending is omu, and the noun ending is u. Omu, u. Now, what about soft masculines or neuters? Well, again, these soft forms are usually going to be very predictable. They're just going to be the soft versions of whatever the hard endings are. So the soft version of omu would be yemu. The soft version of ooh would, of course, be you, right? So that's pretty easy to think about, right? What about feminine? Feminine adjectives are going to take oi, and feminine nouns are going to take yeah. Okay, what about the soft versions? Well, for the adjective, that would be yay. And for nouns, there is no special soft version because yeah is already soft, right? So how could we have a soft version of a what already is a soft vowel? Okay, if we look over a more complete table, we just have this for reference, right? All the forms filled out, including all the special modifiers, which are sometimes slightly unpredictable. So let's just read through the dative row here. Этому, одному, чему, моему, нашему, новому, and now the nouns столу, now some soft nouns, словарю, музею, кафетерию. Okay, feminines. Looking for the oi and then the soft version yay, этой, одной, чей, моей, нашей, новой, and now the nouns газете, неделе, and фамилия. Nope, actually, did you catch that, right? Here's the special case where the special soft feminine takes an ending that's unpredictable, right? And that's why we put the black box here in the table. And this is actually our first indication of why we've been grouping these special soft nouns separately from ordinary soft nouns, right? Because in this and a couple of other instances, their form is different, right? So we have to definitely pay attention to that and kind of flag it as an exception, right? The dative form of familia is familii. Familii. Note that that ending is two syllables, right? E is a vowel, so we have one syllable per vowel in Russian, so familii. Now, if you say it quickly, you might not hear that very distinctly. Familii, but again, if we're speaking clearly, that ending should be two syllables. Okay, finally, the neuters, which look a lot like the masculines. Этому, одному, чему, моему, нашему, новому. And now for the nouns. Окну, морю, белью, заданию. Okay, let's do an exercise. First, look at the poster here. Советской науке слава. To Soviet science, right? There's the dative of Sovietskaya nauka, right? Feminine. We get the dative Sovietskai nauke, to Soviet science, slava, right? Glory to Soviet science. Slava Sovietskому человеку, первому космонавту. Okay, now we have a masculine dative, glory to Soviet man, that is, to the first cosmonaut, right? By the way, we've mentioned already that человек doesn't necessarily imply a male person. It's masculine in gender, but it could be any human being. So человек basically means human being. Now, of course, the first person, the first cosmonaut, the first person in space was Yuri Gagarin, so he happened to be a man. But again, it's important to always remember that человек, though masculine, doesn't necessarily imply a male human being. Okay, let's fill in the blanks here. Let's start out just contrasting accusatives and datives, right? That is direct objects and indirect objects. So if we look at the example, кому ты даешь икру? To whom are you giving the caviar? Okay, so caviar is what's being given. That's the direct object. We're putting that in the accusative. Okay, the answer is я даю икру маме. Даю икру маме. Okay, mama is in the dative, right? We're giving the caviar, direct object, to mom, indirect object. Okay, number one, хлеб. Кому ты даешь хлеб, right? Inanimate masculine. I'm giving it to my brother. I'm giving bread to my brother. Даю хлеб брату. Даю хлеб брату. Now, note that if we change the word order there, dаю bratу хлеб, it wouldn't change the meaning of the sentence at all. It would simply shift the emphasis slightly, right? The emphasis would be more on the final word in the sentence, bread. So it would mean something more like, I'm giving bread to my brother, as opposed to, I guess, the more neutral, I'm giving my brother bread. Okay, number two, chai. To whom are you giving the tea? Кому ты даешь чай? Okay, another masculine, inanimate, no change in the accusative. I'm giving tea to my sister. Даю чай сестре. Yeah is the dative ending. Number 3, to whom are you giving fish? Кому ты даешь рыбу? Remember the accusative a to u for feminines. I'm giving fish to my neighbor. Даю соседу рыбу. Or switch the word order around. Даю рыбу соседу. Даю рыбу соседу. That's an interesting example, right? They feminines take u in the accusative, but masculines take u in the dative, right? So here we have the same ending on these two words. Даю рыбу соседу. But they're different cases, right? And we simply know that by knowing the gender of the noun in the first place, right? By simply knowing that riba is feminine and sasied is masculine. Number 4, borщ. To whom are you giving the beet soup? Кому ты даешь борщ? I'm giving borщ to my female neighbor. Даю борщ соседке. Feminine in yeah. Number 5, to whom are you giving the wine? Кому ты даешь вино? I'm giving wine to my father. Даю вино отцу. Отцу. Remember the mobile vowel there. That yeah is a mobile vowel, so it drops out when we add an ending. Number 6, to whom are you giving the cheese? Кому ты даешь сыр? I'm giving cheese to my friend. Даю сыр другу. Другу. Masculine. Dative. To whom are you giving the fermented bread drink, kvass? Кому ты даешь квас? I'm giving kvass to my girlfriend or to my female friend. Даю квас подруге. Сметана. To whom are you giving the sour cream? Кому ты даешь сметану? Right? Feminine accusative. I'm giving it to my acquaintance. Даю сметану знакомому. Now remember that знакомый is an adjective. So once an adjective, always an adjective. It's going to take the adjectival endings, right? So here we add ому, знакомому. Number 9, to whom are you giving the beer? Кому ты даешь пиво? I'm giving beer to my uncle. Даю пиво дяде. Дяде. Now remember, uncle is masculine grammatically, and of course it refers to a male person, but it takes feminine endings. So дядя is the dative, дядя is the dative of дядя. Okay, number 10, мясо, to whom are you giving the meat? Кому ты даешь мясо? Accusative of this neuter word doesn't change. I'm giving meat to my aunt. Даю мясо тете. Тете. One more note on word order here in these examples. One reason we're using the word order that we are is that, remember, what's most interesting or what's new in a sentence is usually saved for the end, right? Whatever word comes at the end of the sentence in Russian usually is given special emphasis. So if we ask a question like, to whom are you giving the meat? Well, that question is already mentioning meat, right? So the answer may repeat meat, but that meat is no longer sort of the point of the answer, right? The point is to whom we're giving it, right? And that's why that in normal Russian, we would save that new part for the end of the sentence, and we'd say даю мясо, right? That's the old information, to my aunt. New information, the answer to the question, that's going to be emphasized at the end of the sentence. Даю мясо тете. Okay, let's do a few more and throw in some adjectives here. What are you giving to these people, right? So we're adding a adjective of one kind or another. In some cases, a special modifier to these nouns. For example, что ты даешь новому студенту? What are you giving to the new student? Okay, number 1, этот писатель. What are you giving to this writer? Что ты даешь этому писателю? Okay, note the soft ending, писателю. Это женщина. Что ты даешь, feminine, этой женщине? Number 3, another feminine, новая подруга. Что ты даешь новой подруге. Number 4, masculine, старый друг. What are you giving to your old friend? Что ты даешь старому другу? Number 5, new neighbor. Что ты даешь новому соседу? Number 6, your uncle. Now, твой, remember that's a special modifier, so we need to be on our toes. Although if we look at it, we can see it's got a soft stem, so we should probably be able to predict that it's going to take ему, right? Твоему in the dative. So what are you giving to your father? Что ты даешь твоему отцу? Now remember, we could easily leave out the твоему here because we would assume that we're asking the person about their own father. But here we're just including it for the purposes of the exercise, and it's certainly no mistake grammatically to include it. It's just often regarded as superfluous in Russian. Okay, whereas of course it's not in English, right? We wouldn't ask someone, what are you giving to father? Usually we'd have to say, what are you giving to your father? You know, unless it were, I guess, our father. What are you giving to dad? What are you giving to father? Sounds rather formal though. Okay, number 7, ваша мама. Okay, what are you guys giving to your mother? Что вы даете вашей маме? Okay, could we predict that form вашей? Yeah, we could actually. That's the 5-letter spelling rule in action, right? We couldn't write oi here because we can't have an unstressed o after the sh, right? So if we remember our spelling rules, we can actually predict this form вашей. Okay, number 8, our uncle. Okay, remember, дядя itself is taking feminine endings, but it's masculine. So everything modifying it is going to be masculine. So what are we giving to our uncle? Что мы даем нашему дяде? Нашему, that's showing masculine, but дядя itself is taking feminine endings. Number 9, what are you giving to his friend? Что ты даешь его другу? Okay, remember его, when it's playing the role of his, is never going to change, ever, right? Что ты даешь его другу? What are you giving to grandma? Что ты даешь бабушке? Right, feminine. And what are you giving to grandpa? Now, grandpa, again, is masculine, but he's got feminine endings in Russian. So, что ты даешь дедушке? Дедушке. Yeah, the little poslovica here, ни к селу, ни к городу, fairly commonly heard, actually. It means neither toward the village nor toward the city. So what does that mean? Well, it means something like neither here nor there, right? Something is pointless, it makes no sense, something of that nature. Okay, what about pronouns in the dative, right? We have to add our pronouns. We've added our nouns, our adjectives, our special modifiers. What about the pronouns? Well, let's look at the table and review all the forms we've seen so far of the pronouns. Я, меня, мне is the dative, мне. Ты, тебя, тебе is the dative. Он, его, dative, ему. Она, ее, ей is the dative. And neuter, again, closely mirroring the masculine. Оно, его, ему. Okay, remember that for pronouns that would ordinarily begin in a vowel, right? If we happen to use those after a preposition, like with k, right, which takes the dative, we just saw that in the poslovica, and we'll talk more about it later. So if we use one of these pronouns that ordinarily begins in a vowel after a preposition, we have to use a special form that begins with n, right? So in that case, we would have, for example, к нему, к ней, к нему. Okay, as we'll discuss more later in detail, that k is one of several prepositions in Russian that is simply a consonant, right? It's just a one-letter consonant that acts as a preposition. When we see prepositions like that, we read them and the word that follows as though they were a single word. There's no pause whatsoever between the preposition and the word that follows. So let's practice one more time. This is a very important point of Russian pronunciation, and we'll spend more time on it later when we see more of these prepositions. Again, the preposition is к нему, к ней, к нему, and not something like к нему, к ней, к нему, right? There we're introducing a pause, and Russians would almost never do that, right? Unless they were trying to speak extremely clearly, right? You want to say к нему, к ней, к нему. Okay, what about the plurals? Мы, нас, нам is the dative. Вы, вас, вам. Они, их, им. And again, because that starts with a vowel, we would need to add an N after a preposition, and that would give us k ним, k ним. Okay, let's do an exercise substituting some pronouns for nouns. And this sometimes throws students for a bit of a loop. It's really not difficult in theory, but I think sometimes it can just become kind of disorienting. Remember, what is a pronoun? A pronoun, as its name suggests, simply stands in for a noun, right? So he, she, it, they, right? Everyone knows what a pronoun is. We just saw them, of course, in Russian. Well, remember, they stand in for a noun, right? So remember, in Russian, any noun we use in a sentence is going to have a case. So in turn, any pronoun that is going to stand in for a noun will also have a case, right? We have to have the case to tell us what the word is doing in the Russian sentence. So that goes for both nouns and pronouns. So let's just pay attention to what case we need and refer to the table as needed and insert the correct case form of the pronoun. So for example, я дал русский словарь новому студенту. I gave a Russian dictionary to the new student. Okay, я is nominative, that's your subject. Словарь is accusative, that's your direct object. And studentu is dative, that's your indirect object. Okay, so if we wanted to repeat that using pronouns and say things like, I gave it to him, right? We need to replace the accusative словарь. Well, let's think for a moment. This is where students usually get confused. What pronoun will we use to refer to словарь? On, right? As we well know, really, right? That's masculine, so of course we'd use on. But now we need to make sure we're using the right case form of on, right? Well, what is словарь doing in this original sentence? It's the direct object, so it's in the accusative, right? So if we substitute a form of on for the accusative of словарь, we need the accusative of on, which is его. Similarly, for студенту, right? It's that would be on as well, right? It's a male student. But here it's in the dative, so we need the dative of on, which is ему. That gives us я дал его ему. I gave it to him. And now we turn it around. Then he returned it to me. Потом он вернул его мне. Right later, he, that is the student, returned it, that is the dictionary, masculine, to me, the dative of я. Okay, number one. Ты дал новую ручку твоей... Sorry, I thought it was a question at first. Ты дал новую ручку твоей соседке. You gave a new pen to your neighbor, feminine. Okay, so let's say you gave it, feminine, to her, feminine. Ты дал or дала ее, right? That's the accusative of ручка, which is feminine. Ее to your female neighbor, dative ей. Ты дал ее ей. You gave it to her. Then she returned it to you. Потом она, that is the student, вернула ее, that is it, the pen, тебе, the dative of ты. Okay, number two, we gave a spoon and fork to our mother. Мы дали ложку и вилку нашей маме. Okay, мы дали. Okay, here we have a compound direct object, so that's going to be them. We gave them these things to mom, which is feminine. Мы дали их ей. Then she gave them back to us. She returned them to us. Потом она, that is mama, вернула их нам. Right, the dative of мы. Okay, three, профессор дал студентке бумагу. The professor gave to the student paper. Okay, now note there the word order is a bit different than we had in the first two examples. We've got to watch the case endings, right? Студентке is dative and бумагу is the accusative. Okay, so let's say he gave her, it. Он дал ей ее. Он дал ей ее. Okay, so we don't have any context here, but for whatever reason, bumagu is being given emphasis here. So that's a somewhat non-neutral um, word order. Remember that Russian generally is a so-called SVO language, subject, verb, object, and then usually we would expect uh, in terms of objects, the direct object to come first and the indirect object to come second. But again, that's just a rather rough generalization. It would really depend on context. Remember, Russian word order is very flexible. We have to always remember that. But again, the point that's most important for us now is that regardless of word order, we need to be focused on the case endings. Okay, so let's say then then she, the student, returned it to the professor. Потом она вернула. Okay, what's the it going to be? Well, it's going to be feminine for bumagу, right, which is a feminine noun. So она вернула ее ему. She returned it to him, the professor. Number 4, моя подруга дала нашему соседу нож. My girlfriend, my female friend, gave our neighbor a knife. Okay, она дала, let's say to him, it. Again, kind of using this somewhat unusual word order. Она дала ему его. Right? Ему is referring to the neighbor, masculine dative, and его is standing in for нож, masculine accusative. Okay, now let's say later he, the neighbor, gave it, the knife, back to our female friend. Потом он вернул его ей. Okay, let's talk a bit about adverbs. We saw a few of those, I think, in chapter 1, right? When we got a few qualifying adverbs like очень, right? Very, so we could say things like очень интересная книга, a very interesting book. Today, let's talk more about how adverbs are formed generally. The majority of adverbs in Russian are formed from adjectives. Much like in English, right? When we say something is quick, right? We add some kind of an ending like quickly, and we get an adverb from that. Now, what do adverbs do? Remember, well, usually they modify verbs, right? So we built the house quickly, right? How did we build it? Quickly, right? So we use that adverbial form in place of the adjectival one. Although in English, by the way, often we're failing to make these distinctions anymore, right? We say, why don't you do that real quick or something like that, right? Anyway, we could talk more about English, and it's it's lost so much of its inflection, its case endings already, or its word endings already, and it just continues to lose them. It seems by year. Okay, anyway, back to Russian. So if we take a Russian adjective like хороший, плохой, свободный, right? Of course, the adjective has those long adjectival endings on it that we've talked about. So how do we form an adverb from that adjective? Well, most frequently we simply get rid of the adjectival ending like y and add a new ending or, which is the most typical adverbial ending in Russian. So for example, from плохой, we get плохо, right? Oi is replaced with or. And you see in some cases we get a stress shift that's not always predictable. For another example, хороший, the adjective meaning good, gives us the adverb well, which is хорошо, хорошо. Right, so we've added or, and again, sometimes the stress shifts rather unpredictably. But usually we could assume that it would stay put. So for example, свободный means free. Freely, the adverb would be свободно, right? Свободный becomes свободно. Okay, so the one important exception, at least for now, are adjectives ending in ski, right? Ski is a fairly common adjectival suffix. Those are going to form adverbs in ski, right? So almost, it sounds exactly the same, or almost exactly the same, but we've lost the и краткое, right? So for example, from русский, which is the adjective for Russian, we get an adverb по-русски, meaning in the Russian way. Okay, that's an unusual adverb. We've added the po in front of it with this hyphen, so it's a rather funny form. And we're going to use it a lot when talking about languages, right? So literally, when we talk about speaking Russian, for example, я говорю по-русски, that literally means I'm speaking Russianly, or maybe I'm speaking in the Russian way, right? So by the way, you can do lots of things in the Russian way. You can do lots of things по-русски, right? You could live, жить по-русски, right? Live in the Russian fashion. You could drink in the Russian fashion, right? Пить по-русски. Um, sometimes Russians will say something like "это очень по-русски," right? Meaning that's really the way Russians do it. That's really the Russian way. But again, in the textbook, we'll usually use these phrases like по-русски or по-английски to refer to using a language, to speaking or writing or understanding in a given language. That's all по-русски or, for example, по-английски. Okay, so let's look at a poster first. Here are some adverbs. Строить быстро, дешево, хорошо. Right? We want to build quickly, inexpensively, and well. Okay, so those are the adverbial forms of быстрый, quick or fast, дешевый, inexpensive, and хороший, good. Okay, look at a few examples with these adverbs. Мы уже говорим по-русски. We're already speaking in the Russian fashion. Okay, so these examples of adverbs are modifying verbs, hence the agreement eras. Я говорю плохо, а он говорит хорошо. I speak poorly while he speaks well. Она интересно рассказывает. She tells interestingly, meaning she's a good storyteller. Okay, so some good news. We just saw that adverbs typically modify verbs. By the way, they could also modify adjectives or other adverbs. But anyway, the point to be made is that since they don't modify nouns, they're never going to change their form to agree with the noun, right? In terms of gender or case or anything like that, right? So good news, adverbs in Russian will never change their form, ever, 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 right? Because again, all that agreement stuff with nouns and adjectives is just simply not relevant to an adverb, which doesn't modify those. It doesn't modify nouns, right? Now, by the way, if it modifies adjectives, again, it's still not going to change. And we saw examples of that in chapter 1, like again, это очень интересная книга, right? There, the adverb очень is modifying the adjective интересная, but it's not changing to reflect the gender of that noun, which the adjective itself is modifying. Okay, so to wrap it all up, right, adverbs don't change their endings, and that's good news for us. Okay, here are a few questions you could try answering. Как хорошо ты говоришь по-русски? How well do you speak in the Russian way? Как хорошо ты будешь говорить через год? Как ты думаешь? Right, so what do you think? How do you think? How well will you speak in a year from now? Okay, now we have a rather tricky topic, but it's one that's extremely common, extremely useful, and hopefully not really that difficult. It's a new kind of subjectless construction. Okay, so let's think quickly. What do we mean by a subjectless construction? We've already seen this already with the non-existence construction, right? And we learned that in Russian, a subjectless construction has no subject. That's obvious, right? But what does that mean in terms of grammar for Russian? It means we have no nominative case, right? Because that's what a subject is. That's how we tell a subject in Russian, right? It's got to be in the nominative, right? So if you have a subjectless expression, it has no nominative. And if there is a verb involved, the verb is going to be neuter singular, right? It's not going to change to agree with the subject because there is no subject, right? So hopefully you remember how that worked with non-existence constructions like у меня нет книги, I have no book. Okay, no noun there in the nominative. Now if we put that into the past tense, we got у меня не было книги. I didn't have a book. Again, note the verb не было, right? It's showing a neuter form right? Because again, there's no subject. It's always going to be neuter. Okay, let's look at a similar example, a similar situation, right? Namely, a subjectless construction with the dative case. This type of construction is pretty simple and it's extremely common in Russian. So it would be a really good idea to master this. Make sure you understand how this grammar is working, how this Russian idiom is working. Let's start with a very simple example. Let's take the adverb of хороший, which is хорошо, and simply make that into a sentence. Хорошо, хорошо. Okay, I guess the most literal translation of that might be well, right? It's just an adverb in Russian. But if we start unpacking the meaning, we could say things like, there's a good vibe in the air, things are good, it's good, maybe even life is good, right? Now, what have we done in all those translations? We've introduced some kind of a subject, right? Things are good, life is good, or some kind of a dummy subject like it's good or things are good, or well, there is, right? There's another dummy subject. There is a good vibe in the air. There's a good vibe in the air. Okay, so all those things are ways of kind of approximating what the Russian хорошо is saying. That's a full sentence. Хорошо, of course, there's no subject there. It's just an adverb, and it gets across this idea that things are good. Um, Now, of course, again, there's no subject. So what if we want to attach that feeling of goodness to a person? Well, again, these adverbs are used in subjectless construction, so we can't introduce a person in the nominative. Instead, we use the dative, and we say things like мне хорошо, мне хорошо. So again, we can unpack that in multiple ways. We could say things like things are good for me, or it's good for me. There's a good vibe in the air for me. Or we could put it in maybe better English and say, I feel good. I feel good. But again, note the problem that English idiom is so different from the Russian, right? I feel good or I feel well, right? We're introducing a subject and a verb and all this stuff. So it can be very confusing again if we rely on the English idiom and try to go from that to the Russian, right? We need to really home in on what the Russian is doing. Хорошо, things are good. Мне хорошо, things are good for me. I feel good. Now, if we use those subjectless expressions in the past tense, we need to introduce a verb form, and the verb form is going to be neuter, right? Мне было хорошо, right? So we could say simply было хорошо, meaning things were good, life was good, or introducing a person into the mix, мне было хорошо, things were good for me. Now in the future, we would use будет, right, which would be that would correspond to a neuter singular form of the verb in the future tense, right? Будет хорошо, meaning it'll be good, things will be good, life will be good, there'll be a good vibe. Or мне будет хорошо, things will be good for me, I'll feel good, I'll be doing well, any of those things, right? So you see all these different ways we could try to get across the sense of the Russian idiom. Let's look at a quick poster from the adjective stydny, which means shameful. We get the adverb stydno, shamefully, right? So that would be the normal way to translate that, shamefully. But here, stydno, again, that's a full sentence. It's not modifying uh, a verb. It's simply communicating the feeling, right? What this guy is feeling. Stydno, right? Now, if we wanted to introduce a person, right, in this case a pronoun, we could say ему стыдно, right? He is feeling shameful or ashamed. Or more literally, we could say it is shameful for him, right? It is shameful for him. Ему стыдно. Why is he so ashamed? Well, because he's fairly well dressed, but he's behaved like a hooligan, right? He's behaved like a hooligan. And for some reason, I've seen several posters like this. I guess it must have been a thing for Soviet hooligans to go around breaking ornamental trees for no apparent reason, right? Just like damaging shrubbery and stuff like this. It seems a little bit random, but anyway, the little rhyme up there says, Напился, ругался, напился, ругался, сломал древцо, стыдно смотреть людям в лицо. a little rhyming couplet meaning he got drunk, he cursed, he broke a little tree. It is shameful to look people in the face. Okay, so again, that same adverb stydno is repeated in the little rhyming couplet, right? Stydno смотреть. It's shameful to look. It's shameful to look people in the face after behaving like a hooligan. Okay, so here is a table of some forms, some fairly common ones, some common adverbs of this kind that are used to express feelings. So all of these are extremely useful, extremely common. Okay, let's just read through these. Хороший, that would give us phrases like мне хорошо, right? I feel good. Плохой, мне плохо. Интересный, мне интересно. Веселый, мне весело. Невеселый, мне не весело. Грустный, мне грустно. Больной, meaning painful or sick. Мне больно. It's painful for me, or I feel pain, I'm hurting, I'm sick, I'm aching. Стыдный, мне стыдно. I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed. Неловкий, awkward. Мне неловко. So that can mean I feel awkward, I feel embarrassed, I feel uncomfortable. Страшный. Мне страшно. Легкий. Мне легко. Something's easy for me. So if we just have simply мне легко, right, we could translate that as, life's easy right now. Life's easy for me. Things are going well, and so forth. Трудный. Мне трудно. It's hard for me. Things are hard for me right now. Скучный. Мне скучно, right? I'm bored. I feel bored. Холодный. Мне холодно. I'm cold. Okay, let's fill in some of these phrases with an adverb and, in this case, a full noun, not simply a pronoun, but some kind of noun adjective phrase. We want to put that into the dative, right, to use with this in the subjectless construction. For example, моему брату хорошо. My brother feels good. Твоя сестра, what'll that be in the dative? Твоей сестре не весело. Right, things are unhappy. Your sister is unhappy. She's not having a good time. The new professor. Новому профессору трудно. Things are hard for the new professor. Things are difficult for him. He's new on the job. Number 3, наш отец, our father, he felt bad. Note the past tense, right? Ему было плохо. Нашему отцу было плохо. Our father felt bad. Number 4, their new neighbor. Их новому соседу скучно. He feels bored. Number 5, ее новая соседка, her new neighbor, feminine, feels sad. Ее новой соседке грустно. Number 6, things will be very interesting for me in Russia. Right, now note here the future tense. Мне будет очень интересно в России. Number 7, you felt so ashamed yesterday. I wonder what you did. You felt very ashamed. Тебе было так стыдно вчера. Okay, number 8, he feels very uncomfortable now, very awkward. Ему очень неловко сейчас. Number 9, она. Okay, now another future tense. It will be easy for her to speak in Russian. Ей будет легко говорить по-русски. Number 10, you polite or you all. It will be hard for you all to read Dostoevsky. Let's go ahead and pretend it's plural. Вам будет трудно читать Достоевского. It'll be hard for you to read Dostoevsky. By the time we get to the end of book 4, it won't be too hard. It will at least be manageable, right? It certainly won't be easy, but by that point, we'll be able to enjoy Dostoevsky, I promise. Okay, number 11, они. They feel well and happy today. Им хорошо и весело сегодня. Okay, next exercise, just some more examples. Now here we're taking a present tense phrase with one of these adverbs and making it past and future just to underscore that we're always using neuter singular forms of these verbs, right, in the past and future. So let's start with the dative, right? We need the dative of nasha podruga. That would be nashi podrugie. Okay, now that's not going to change, right? So we could go ahead and fill that in all three examples. But in present tense, it would be nashi podrugie плохо. Our girlfriend, our female friend is feeling badly. Let's make that past tense. We need to toss in a было. Нашей подруге было плохо. Future tense, she will feel badly. Нашей подруге будет плохо. Number two, dative of мой сын. Masculine will be моему сыну. Okay, he is bored. Моему сыну скучно. He was bored. Моему сыну было скучно. Again, we have to stick with the neuter form of the verb. Same thing in future tense. My son will be bored or feel bored. Моему сыну будет скучно. Number three, моя дочка. Dative will be моей дочке. She's sad. Моей дочке грустно. She was sad. Моей дочке было грустно. She will feel sad. Моей дочке будет грустно. Number four, его жена. Okay, we need the dative. Now remember, его, that word meaning his, will never change in Russian. Его жене стыдно. His wife was ashamed. Okay, she was ashamed. Его жене было стыдно. She will be ashamed. Его жене будет стыдно. Number five, ее муж. Her husband was happy. He was having a good time. Ее мужу весело. Sorry, he is having a good time. He's happy. Okay, he was, past tense. Ее мужу было весело. He will be having a good time. Ее мужу будет весело. We have one more really important type of adverb to talk about today, and this will allow us to form, again, some extremely common, extremely useful constructions with infinitives, right? We're going to call these modal adverbs. So these are things that, modal words generally, including verbs, you may have heard this term studying other languages. They have to do with ability, necessity, and things like this. So being able to do something, or one has to do something, right? It is necessary to do something. It is allowed to do something, that type of idea. So in Russian, we're going to usually convey that with one of these modal adverbs. So here's a quick table with some of the most common ones. Nada, we could think of that as it is necessary to. Now, but again, contrast the grammar, right? In Russian, this is simply an adverb, right? We can translate it as it is necessary to, and that pretty much captures it. But again, we are introducing an it in the English, a dummy subject that's not present in the Russian. Okay, можно means it's possible. Невозможно means it's not possible. Нельзя means also something's not possible, usually in the sense of it's not allowed, right? One shouldn't, one mustn't do something. That's a common one to express a prohibition. Пора means it's time to. And one that's not nearly as common, but I threw it in anyway because you do hear it. Лень means I'm lazy. I'm too lazy to do something. I feel lazy and I don't want to do it, right? So that's kind of a special case, but I added it here anyway because it works in the same way as these other very common ones. Now, a lot of the adverbs we just learned can also be followed by an infinitive, right? So let me back up actually. Just the way we say in English, it is necessary to do something, or it is possible to do something. I'm not allowed to do something, right? We use infinitives, right? It's necessary to work. It's possible to read. I'm not allowed to play, or whatever. We've mentioned already that, generally speaking, the uses of the infinitive in English and Russian are very close to each other. So that's a pretty easy point of grammar usually, and the case is no different here. Right, so for example, if we wanted to say it is necessary to read in Russian, we would say надо читать, right? Надо followed by an infinitive. Now let's look at some other adverbs that aren't really modal, they're not modal adverbs, they're just the adverbial forms that we've made from the adjectives just now, right? Трудно, легко, скучно, and so forth. We can follow any of those with an infinitive, right? How would we say it is difficult to read? Трудно читать. Again, just like in English, it's difficult to read. Трудно читать. Okay, now again, since these are adverbial constructions, they're going to be subjectless in Russian. So just the way we saw just a moment ago, right? There's no subject here. So if we want to introduce a person into the mix here and say for whom it's possible or for whom it's easy or whatever to do something, we need to use the dative, right? Because again, if we introduced a nominative form, that would be introducing a subject, and we can't have that in this construction. Okay, so again, we could introduce a dative like мне and say things like мне надо работать. We could translate that rather literally as it is necessary for me to work, or more loosely as I have to work, I need to work, or anything like that. Okay, now what if we made that past tense and we wanted to say I had to work? Well, we just have to remember that we need to include the past tense verb, and since we have no subject, the form of the verb is going to be neuter, right? So it's going to be again, было. Мне надо было работать. Or future tense, мне надо будет работать. Okay, let's take another example. It's трудно. Мне трудно говорить по-русски. It's hard for me to speak Russian. Past tense would be мне трудно было. Мне трудно было говорить по-русски. Or future, мне трудно будет говорить по-русски. Мне трудно будет говорить по-русски. By the way, it's worth pointing out that можно is, in my opinion, the most useful word in all of Russian for especially if you're going to Russia, right? And you want to be polite, because можно means basically it is possible. But if you use it as a question and say можно, note the intonation, можно, then it can mean almost anything based on the context, right? So you could point to like this, we're in a bookstore, I'll say, I point to this book, можно, right? That can mean, can I see it? Can you hand it to me? Can I buy it? Just almost anything. If you're at a meal and you want some more salad or whatever, you could point out and say, можно, or even better, можно еще, right? Can I have more? Can I have still? Можно еще. You could point at a C to ask if it's taken and say, можно. Okay, so that one word will convey all sorts of different things in Russian. That makes it very useful. Okay, anyway, let's do some examples here and try choosing the appropriate aspect, right? So we're using an infinitive after an adverb, but as always, when we choose an infinitive, we need to choose the correct aspect, right? Let's watch for red flags that might help us choose correctly. Мне надо каждый день blank газету. Any red flags? Yeah, каждый день, every day, that's repetition, so we need читать, right? We need the imperfective. Number two, мне надо сегодня blank эту статью. Today, it's necessary for me to blank this article. Okay, sounds like we're focused on success. It's also a one-time event, сегодня. So all clues point to прочитать. Мне надо сегодня прочитать эту статью. Okay, could you say читать here? Well, you could, but it would imply that today I need to sit around reading the article. It doesn't imply completion, which I think ordinarily, we don't have many clues here, but I think most likely here is прочитать. Okay, number three. Ему вообще можно... Sorry, it's a question. Ему вообще можно blank телевизор? Okay, remember вообще means generally speaking, or at all. Okay, so that's a very broad context. It would always call for the imperfective, right? Is he allowed to watch the television, generally speaking? Ему вообще можно смотреть телевизор? Number four, time to work. Tomorrow we have an exam. Okay, пора almost always takes the imperfective. It can sometimes be seen with the perfective, but you should think as kind of a rule of thumb that imperfective is by far more common. So, пора работать, right? Time to get to work. It's time to work. Завтра у нас экзамен. We have an exam tomorrow. Number 5. Он русский, ему легко blank по-русски. He's Russian, it's easy for him to blank in Russian. Okay, that's a general statement, right? It's an ongoing ability that he has, so we would choose читать. Ему легко читать по-русски. Number 6. Надо всегда blank правду. It's always necessary to tell the truth. Okay, any red flags? Yes, всегда, right? So we need to говорить. Надо всегда говорить правду. One should always speak the truth, tell the truth. Number 7, надо сейчас blank за ужин. Now we need to pay for dinner. Okay, sure sounds like perfective, right? We have now, сейчас, so a very narrow time frame. We have a single meal we're talking about, very narrow context, a one-time incident, and calls for perfective. Надо сейчас заплатить за ужин. Okay, what if we said надо сейчас платить за ужин? It would be something like in English saying, I need it now it's necessary to go about paying for dinner, which makes sense, but when would you really say that, right? It sounds rather strange. Okay, so again, заплатить would be far more likely here. Number 8, мне лень было писать. I didn't feel like writing. Okay, лень, it's talking about you're too lazy to engage in the activity at all, right? Much less finish it. So лень would almost always be followed by imperfective. Мне лень было писать. I was too lazy to write. Number 9. Здесь нельзя танцевать. It's prohibited to dance here. One can't dance here. So that's just a general prohibition. So again, think, it wouldn't make much sense to say, it's forbidden to dance for a bit here, right? What kind of sense would that make, right? If it's prohibited to dance, then that's a general statement, right? You can't dance at all. That would be танцевать. Number 10, нам было трудно. It was hard for us to blank the problem. Okay, to solve the problem. Okay, this is an interesting example. When you're choosing infinitives after adverbs or verbs talking about attempting to do something. In this case, it was hard to solve the problem, right? Well, what was hard? Successfully solving the problem, right? It would be weird to say it was hard for us to go about solving the problem. I mean, you could say that, but the point, it's not the trying that's hard, it's the success that's hard, right? That's kind of the point of the whole statement. So in instances like this, again, you would almost always get perfective. Нам было трудно решить эту задачу. It was hard to solve the problem successfully. Now, again, if you said нам было трудно решать эту задачу, it's talking about the process, right? And you're saying something like, we had a really hard time going about solving the problem. So again, you're seeing in these examples, sometimes it's not really about being right or wrong. It's really about a shift in emphasis, especially when you don't have some obvious red flag that's really crying out for one aspect or the other. Okay, let's translate a few sentences. You might want to pause the video and see if you can do this yourself before I give you the answer. These are a little bit tricky, right? And again, the tricky thing is we've got to avoid the English idiom. It's not going to help us at all in most cases. Okay, number 1. He wants to watch TV, but he isn't allowed. Он хочет посмотреть телевизор. Okay, now let's rephrase the second part a bit. That might help. But it is not allowed to him, right? Ему нельзя. Он хочет смотреть телевизор, но ему нельзя. Right? Ему нельзя смотреть телевизор. Number 2, he wanted to watch TV, but he wasn't allowed. Okay, same thing, but in the past tense. Он хотел смотреть телевизор, но ему нельзя было. Нельзя было ему. Again, we could use multiple word orders there. Нельзя было ему. Ему было нельзя. Again, note the verb было. May we sit here? Можно здесь сидеть? Yeah, okay, again, there's that можно. And here we're following it with an infinitive. Можно здесь сидеть? Number 4, we'll have to ask the professor when the exam will be. Нам надо будет спросить профессора. Note there the future tense. We will have to ask. Or it will be necessary for us to ask. Нам надо будет спросить профессора, comma, когда будет экзамен. Right, there's that reported question. Number 5, it was very interesting for us to watch the Russian film. Нам было очень интересно смотреть русский фильм. It was very interesting for us. It's so difficult for me to read this Russian book. Мне так трудно читать эту русскую книгу. Мне так трудно читать эту русскую книгу. Okay, try answering a few questions on your own. Что тебе надо сделать? Okay, note the aspect there. What is it necessary for you to get done, right? We're focused on accomplishment. Что тебе надо сделать? Now, presumably you would respond to that with some perfective verbs telling what you need to accomplish. Number 2, что тебе надо купить? What do you need to buy? Тебе трудно говорить по-русски? Is it hard for you to speak Russian? I'm guessing yes at this stage, right? You should always remember that Russian, speaking Russian is always going to take more time than learning the grammar, than learning to read Russian and hopefully understand Russian, right? The speaking is going to be very hard, right? Russian students ask that quite often, right? And they have to always kind of try to manage expectations, right? That, of course, it's going to take a lot longer to start speaking Russian competently than it would with French or Spanish or German or something like that, because it's just a harder language. There's no question about that, right? So we have to remember as we're learning all these endings, right, we may sort of be familiar with the tables and start filling in blanks and kind of know it theoretically, but of course, using them spontaneously is going to take practice, right? So plan your trip to Russia now and immerse yourself, and in time you will just catch on to it. Anyway, number 4. Тебе интересно смотреть телевизор? Is it interesting for you to watch television? I could answer that and say, мне не очень интересно смотреть телевизор в последнее время. Lately, it hasn't been very interesting for me to watch television. It strikes me as rather boring. Anyway, number 5. Тебе лень работать сегодня? Are you too lazy to work today? Number 6. Тебе надо приготовить ужин сегодня? Is it necessary for you to prepare dinner today, right? Do you have to cook dinner today? Okay, one more propaganda poster. This is a very famous one. Партия сказала надо, комсомол... Sorry, bungled that. Партия сказала надо, комсомол ответил есть. The party said it is necessary, and the komsomol, meaning the member of the communist youth organization, said есть. And есть is how we know that means to be, or it is. Sorry, I should say it is. And that's just a standard way to answer a command in Russian, like in the military. So it's kind of a rather particular usage of that есть. So again, the party said, you need to do this. This needs to be done. Nada. And the loyal youth says, it's done. Consider it done. That would be a good way to translate есть here. На поля, на стройки. To the fields, to the construction sites. Meaning she's off to work on the collective farms or on a construction site. So until next time, до свидания, товарищи.